So our top focus here on Headlines Today this hour, the big exclusive breaking from India Today. The two recently declassified Intelligence Bureau files have revealed that the Jawaharlal Nehru government spied on the kin of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose for nearly 2 decades. The files, which have since been moved to the National Archives, show unprecedented surveillance on Bose's family members between 1948 and 1968. Nehru was the Prime Minister for 16 of these 20 years and the IB reported directly to him. The files show the IB resumed British-era surveillance on the 2 Bose family homes in Calcutta at 1 Woodburn Park and 38/2 Elgin Road. Now, apart from intercepting and copying letters written by Bose's family members, agency sleuths shadowed them on their domestic and foreign travels. The agency seemed specially keen to know who all the Bose kin met and what they discussed. A series of handwritten messages shows the agents phoned in security control as the IB headquarters was called then to report on the family's movements. And for reasons still not entirely clear, the agency focused on Netaji's nephew siblings Shishir Kumar Bose and Omyonath Bose.
My cousin, he is now an MP with the TMC. Now this is the document of his. Now here we have the proof. Now the sad part of the story is, if you are in Parliament, he could have easily raised his voice concerning his father. By the Congress government put his father under surveillance.
As a government, government has certain responsibility. Beyond that, I do not think that there is anything. Maybe it is an effort to make a story out of nothing. So there is nothing unusual that a government is, keeping a watch on all the developments. That is not with an inimical, in an inimical angle. It was the responsibility of the government, but that is being interpreted that Panditji was hostile to Subhash Chandra Bose ji. I think that interpretation is wrong.
अब देखिए कांग्रेस पार्टी का
So clearly a lot of political reactions pouring in there on that big exclusive of India Today. Now joining me is Sandeep Unithan, Deputy Editor with the India Today, who also broke this big story. And also we will be cutting across in fact to Kolkata, where we will be joined shortly by one of Mr. Netaji's relatives. And Manogya Loiwal, my colleague, joins me from Kolkata as well. But Sandeep, really, what was in a way the most stunning part of these revelations for you? What is the scale of surveillance that we are looking at here between 1948 to 68?
There was an almost obsessive level of surveillance on the Bose family between 1948 and 68, 20 years. I mean, if you look at it, it's almost the kind of surveillance that the government today would place a wanted terrorist leader or a Naxalite leader's family. This interception of letters, shadowing the family members, you had agents tailing them wherever they went, Kolkata, Delhi, Chennai. There's, requests from the government officials asking who they met in Japan, in Germany. So there's clearly a very high level of government paranoia with the relatives of Subhash Bose, who they were in touch with, what they were meeting, what they were discussing. I mean, this kind of surveillance is something that you would normally expect of a communist regime or East German Stasi secret police kind of surveillance. But for a democratic country like ours, to do this kind of surveillance for 20 years is almost unprecedented.
And also on the family of somebody who was like, the freedom fighter who did things which were unprecedented. One of our tallest
nationalist leaders. I mean, here was a man who was Congress president who actually contested for the legacy of Gandhi. I mean, at one point there were just 3 people in Indian politics, 3 important people. It was Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru and Subhash Bose, and as we all know now, it was Panditji was anointed as Mahatma Gandhi's political successor,
right? And
Bose was the outsider. He was the person who had to seek his political legacy elsewhere, which is why he famously traveled across to Germany. And here was a man who was so obsessed with India's freedom struggle. He wanted freedom at any cost. He wanted to throw the British out, and he had absolutely no qualms about tying up with the fascist forces with Nazi Germany. He traveled to Nazi Germany, he met Adolf Hitler and he got him to support India's independence movement. And then he later traveled spectacularly in submarines to Japan, where he met the Prime Minister of Japan and sought his help in...
Sandeep, those are of course, those are documented as far as the history is concerned. But, those papers that you have really, I'm very curious to know here, before I go over to Manogya, in fact, at a technical level, how does it work really? Because you have papers which have been declassified, but they still remain to be classified in Kolkata. How does it work really?
Well, a lot of people who have seen the documents seem to believe that these were declassified by accident. Now, these are the copies of West Bengal Intelligence Bureau files that are kept in the Home Ministry with the IB here in Delhi over the last few decades. And they were declassified along with several other hundreds of documents sometime, a few months back. We believe it was sometime November, December last year. And these two files kind of slipped through the gaze of the government. So there's a lot of people believe that this might have actually happened by accident, because if we see the kind of detailed methodology of the IB that's revealed, a lot of this is still relevant today. I mean, I'm sure the Intelligence Bureau uses similar techniques to track political opponents of the government, or leaders of families of the Maoists, and these give away their tactics and techniques. So I'm sure they would not have wanted this to come out in the public glare.
Right, Sandeep in fact has those bunch of papers there, and we will be getting you further details in fact from what lies there really in those files. But Manogya, along expected lines, of course, reactions of shock coming in from the Bose family. But do they have a sort of any sense? Are they coming up with any theories as to why would the kin of Netaji be under surveillance at that time?
Well, a lot of reasons. The first was, of course, the insecurity that could have been of the ruling front at that time. That was the reason. One of the kins also told us and confirmed to us on camera that there was a raw agent always present in every meeting that was held. And on being identified, he would say that he would hear who was there in the functions since from 48 to 68, and he was there to attend functions and only to hear what was happening in the family. So they had an idea on their being tracked, being traced, and of course being probed every minute. But not to the extent that it was being reported to the Prime Minister every minute and with the latest developments. Of course, there have been instances where they feel that they were tracked even to foreign countries. So this gave an idea on how the Congress government had been snooping continuously as far as the Bose family was concerned.
Sandeep, coming back, of course, to these declassified papers. Now, when you go across the papers, does it give you any sense as per the motivation of why the surveillance was happening there? Means, was the government of the day unsure of what had really happened to Netaji? Was he re-emerging? Why really, track the family members?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the papers right here. I'm just going to hold it up for you. These are what they look like. These are letters of the family. And if you see, the IB officials have underline the places, the lines which they find interesting, and the people. They're basically names of people who the Bose family are meeting in Germany, in Japan, political contacts, and IB officials, former IB officials who've studied these documents.
In fact, if we could just try and point in those papers, and maybe if the camera could zoom in and give a closer angle to our viewers. Yeah, please carry on.
This is what the files look like, and retired IB officials who have studied these documents for us tell us that the surveillance seems to be politically motivated. I mean, it's clearly they were looking for political leads in the Bose family letters. I mean, so clearly one line of thinking is that they were afraid that the Bose family could actually revive themselves as political opponents to the government of the day.
But Sandeep, as far as the IB is concerned, political snooping is nothing new really, in today's time and age as well. And dirty tricks department of various governments, parties, ruling parties have been known to be using these IP reports at various points in time. Here we are looking at an IB which was in fact known by a different name between 48 to 68 for a country that was post-independence. So what really would have been the amount of direct reporting to the PMO and the, in a way directly to Mr. Nehru at that point in time?
Well, it's no secret that the Intelligence Bureau reported directly to the Prime Minister, and the person who was the IB chief from 1948 to 1964 a very, very powerful figure. I mean, he's our equivalent of J. Edgar Hoover, a gentleman named Bholanath Malik. He was probably Pandit Nehru's most trusted spy master. I mean, there have only been two intelligence spy czars in India. The first is B.N. Malik and the second is Rameshwar Nath Kao. And incidentally, a lot of these mails, if you see, some of these letters are addressed to Mr. R.N. Kao, who as we all know, was the founder of the RNAW in 1968. So Mr. Kao is a rising star in the intelligence bureau in the 40s and the 50s, and a lot of these intercepts of letters of the Bose family are in fact addressed to him directly.
Right. And
there are a lot of other interesting anecdotes that we've been able to gather from these files. Is that in one case you have one Mr. A.C. M. Nambiar, who's under surveillance because he is one of Netaji's aides who actually works in the government of India. He's in Switzerland, but he's on some kind of security watch list. And the intelligence bureau official who is watching him and who's actually reading the letters where he's in contact with the Bose family is his own nephew, who's also called Mr. Nambiar. So, I mean, there are a little surprising elements like that have come to light. But overall, it seems to be this obsessive need of the government to know what the Bose family is up to, and whether they are politically relevant in the 40s, in the 50s, if they could re-emerge to threaten the Prime Minister, threaten the Congress party.
Or maybe, go ahead with the entire INA thing itself.
That's right. There are a couple of intercepts here which seem to suggest, given the underlinings and the emphasis given by the IB officials, where they say that they could possibly revive the Indian National Army.
Right. Could I request you, in fact, just to intervene you, if you could just put up that paper also to the camera once again, so that we could just zoom in.
Yes, there are these intercepts which say, which actually record the interest of the IB in knowing who they are in touch with in the INA, the old INA, and they actually mention if there is a possibility of the revival of the Indian National Army, either as a political force or as an organization that could directly threaten the Congress government.
Right.
And let's not forget, the Intelligence Bureau it's not a historical research organization. It's not interested in people who are dead. I mean, they are the eyes and ears of the government. They keep a watch on present and future threats. So it's their job to warn the government of present and future threats.
Right.
And a lot of this snooping seems to indicate that they were warning the government of a political threat to the Congress government in the 50s and the 60s.
Something, in fact, which, Manogya, you were also pointing out to. But clearly, for the family, over the years, of course, this has been one of the most contentious issues as far as Indian politics is concerned. The whereabouts of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, the confirmations or the controversies about as to where did he go missing, about his possible death. What do the family now really sort of expect? Because every time an RTI activist, two family members have pressurized the government to declassify the Netaji papers, the standard response has been, we cannot do that. They will perhaps have prejudicial impacts with relationship as far as foreign countries are concerned. What are they expecting now?
Interestingly, Smita, I would like to highlight that there are 64 files that are still yet to be classified as far as the government of West Bengal is concerned. And on the contrary, till the time Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee was in opposition, she too demanded the same, and once she held the helm of affairs, she too rather changed sides. That's what happened with every government also that came into power in past so many years. And perhaps that has been the story at the center and the state. There have been queries that have been raised by the families requesting and of course urging the central and the state government to declassify the files at the earliest so that they come to know on what was happening exactly and what happened exactly, because there have been several commissions that have been placed. Remember the Mukherjee commission that was placed, and of course there have been Justice Ganguly who's been vocal about the commission. But besides all this, there has been only the bone of contention that when would these files be classified, because that's what has been the demand of the family. Interestingly, despite being an MP from Trinamool Congress, Sugata Bose has never raised this point in the parliament despite being a part of the ruling frontier. And that would give us an idea on how sometimes divided the family is, sometimes united the family is in presenting a united face as far as Netaji is concerned, and of course sometimes divided as far as the issue is concerned.
Right. Manogya, Sandeep, stay on with us, because I'm now joined in fact by the grand nephew of Netaji, Mr. Chandra Bose. Mr. Bose, if I could just get your first reactions when you saw these stories, as the India Today has reported that family members of Netaji, in fact, were put under extensive surveillance between 1948 to 1968.
Well, it is certainly a very shocking news. And in fact, if my father, Omyonath Bose, would have been alive today, he would have been under tremendous shock. Because in independent India, I think members of the Subhash and Sharad Bose family who fought for the freedom of this nation, in independent India, we cannot move freely. We are put under surveillance by the central government. I think it is the most shocking news that I've heard in my lifetime.
But what would you assess to be a possible motive for this act?
Well, you see, it is a fact, and Pandit Nehru was fully aware that if Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose returned to India after independence, he would have been the national leader, because the kind of support and following Subhash Bose had within the country and even outside, it was quite natural that he would have been the leader of this nation. He would have given leadership. So Nehru was a bit apprehensive. Nehru was fully aware that Subhash Bose did not die in any air crash. And he feared that if he returned to India, he would certainly be in touch with one of his closest nephews, Omyonath Bose. Therefore, he put Omyonath Bose under surveillance to find out his activities, whether he is in touch with his uncle Subhash.
Well, Mr. Bose, stay on with us. Sandeep Unithan, in fact, my colleague from India Today who broke the story is also in the studio. Sandeep, when you go through these classified papers, but do you also get a sense of what these people were snooping for, what the government of the day was snooping for? Did they find something to that effect? Maybe about Mr. Omyonath Bose trying to be in touch with INA, or a possible re-emergence of sort. Did they find something? Is that indicated in these papers?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have the analysis of these papers. All we have is portions of these files which are actually just copies of the letters and the shadow. We don't have the analysis. I'm sure those analyses are still highly classified. They remain with the government, and this is possibly one of those 60-odd files that Manogya speaks of, which are still with the West Bengal government, which are still yet to be declassified by the Union Home Ministry. Let's not forget there are something like 150 top secret files which the government still holds on Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose.
I'm hoping those files are not really in that new secretariat building that caught fire, in fact, this morning. But, Mr. Bose, in fact, coming back to you, because you are Mr. Omyonath Bose's son, who was under extensive surveillance, one of Netaji's kins, in fact, during that period. But clearly, what do you expect from the government? But as my colleague was pointing out, that Mr. Sugata Bose, another of your relatives, in fact, is a member of parliament. But he's also never really come out openly demanding or possibly trying to take a step forward towards declassification of these files.
Yes, I think members of the Bose family, 50 members of the Bose family are united and they are of the view that all files relating to Subhash Chandra Bose's mystery, all files relating to the Indian National Army must be declassified and put on the public domain. You see, we would demand a judicial inquiry into this. This should be done by a sitting Supreme Court judge, and a high-powered committee should be formed. Special investigation team should be formed by the government of India.
But is it really possible, sir? It's been almost 67 years, the period that we are looking at, and with, of course, the majority papers still being classified. Do you really think that some sort of a probe can come up with outcomes in this case?
You see, India attained independence due to Subhash Chandra Bose and the Indian National Army, and subsequently the INA, the effect of the INA trials held at the Red Fort. These are not my words. This has been told by Sir Clement Attlee, who was the British Prime Minister during the Second World War.
Right.
And Sir Clement Attlee had visited Calcutta and was staying at the Raj Bhavan with the governor, the then governor of Bengal, Justice Fanibhushan Chakravarti. Justice Chakravarti had asked a very simple question to Sir Clement Attlee. What made you leave India? Was it Gandhiji's non-violent movement or something else? Sir Attlee very specifically replied, stating that Gandhiji's movement had minimal effect. It had no impact at all because it had died down way back in 1942. But the real reason why the British had to leave India was the Indian National Army and Subhas Chandra Bose and subsequently the INA trials.
Well,
it is because of Subhash Bose. Yes.
Of course, you know, his role in this entire...
Subhash Chandra Bose that India attained freedom. So don't you think it is a betrayal to the nation?
Well,
the government of India, the Congress government, has not released the documents to unravel the truth, has snooped on family members who are close to Subhash Bose.
Well, Mr.
Don't
Bose,
you think
but
they have betrayed the nation?
Neither has the BJP so far. In fact, you know, even after the BJP came into power, the responses have been the same like the previous governments in parliament. But if you could just take us through in this period of time that we are talking about, 48 to 68, how old was your father at that point in time? What was his relationship like with Netaji? What could you share about that phase in your father's life with our viewers?
Well, my father was born in 1915. He died in 1996. My father was involved with the freedom movement when he was in Cambridge. He was at Cambridge University in the 30s, in the late 30s. So he was very much involved with the freedom movement. He was inspired by Subhash Chandra Bose's ideology. He was definitely one of the closest members of the family to Subhash. Now, you see, the issue is, Amyanath Bose, apart from being Subhash Chandra Bose's nephew, he was a barrister at law. He was practicing at the Calcutta High Court and the Supreme Court. He was a member of parliament in the Lok Sabha in 1967. He defeated Sachin Chowdhury, who was the finance minister in Indira Gandhi's cabinet. So he was not an ordinary person. He was a very important person in his own right. Now, such a person is snooped upon by the Congress government. I think it is a shame. We should hang our heads in shame that in independent India, a personality like Amyanath Bose is kept under surveillance. Do you know when he visited Japan in 1957? He was in fact spied upon in Japan, in Tokyo, where he went, who are the people he interacted with. All these have been put under surveillance. I think we demand, the people of this nation demands that the NDA government, you see, the Congress government had something to fear, but I don't think the NDA government has anything to fear. Why don't they come forward and declassify Subhash Chandra Bose's files and unravel the mystery of his disappearance?
We will have to wait and watch for the NDA reactions, of course. But Sandeep, you know, as Mr. Bose in fact is pointing out, that when his father was traveling to Japan, the government of the day then would even spy on when he was on foreign land. So really, you know, were there possibilities that even houses were bugged? What is the kind of surveillance that we are looking at here?
Well, actually, that hasn't come out yet, but that there is a reasonable degree of suspicion, and I'm sure the family members also suspected this, that as soon as they read these files, that their houses, their phones were also tapped, because, I mean, a surveillance of this kind would be incomplete if you didn't tap their telephones as well. But that is not part of these files, which is why, as I was saying earlier, it's quite possible that only parts of these files which the government wanted to be put out in the public domain have been declassified. Well, actual methodologies and all that would still remain classified.
Are we essentially finding that the focus was on Shishir Kumar Bose and Amyanath Bose, or were there other relatives also who were there?
Yes, other relatives, like very interestingly, there are a lot of letters where they are in contact with Netaji's wife, Emily Schenkel, in Austria, and there are several letters which she writes to Shishir Bose and Amyanath Bose, where she's talking about the family. I mean, her only child, Anita Bose, and she describes her education and how she's growing up and learning English, and those kind of personal details are there. But essentially, the surveillance was on the two nephews of Netaji, that is Shishir Bose and Amarnath Bose. And one of the reasons is that these two nephews were the ones who were the closest to Netaji. One of them actually helped him to escape from Kolkata in 1941. And he had been arrested by the British and put in jail in what is now Pakistan. And he remained there for a very substantial period of time. So if Netaji were to come back, if he wanted to come back to India, these were the two people who would immediately know his whereabouts.
Right. So, in fact, they were under surveillance, and Mr. Chandra Bose, son of Mr. Amarnath Bose, in fact, is with us. But if Manogya Loiwal is still there with us, I would like to cut across to her quickly. Manogya, in fact, as far as Mr. Shishir Kumar Bose is concerned, the other nephew of Netaji, in fact, is their family also hopeful that if some sort of a probe is initiated after all these years, that perhaps there could be outcomes? Or do they think that, you know, even if you were to announce a probe, you possibly couldn't come out with results?
Well, absolutely. Even if a probe is ordered, that of course will highlight the intentions of the government on whether they want to highlight what happened in the past in the right way or not. The truth has to be out, and the family has been demanding for it regularly and continuously. They have been fighting from pillar to post as far as the governments are concerned. There have been commissions who have been asked to take over the cases, but not to the satisfaction of the family. And every time a report is filed, either it is included in the classified documents, or if it is revealed, only parts of it is revealed. Now, this is the bone of contention. That's what the family has been demanding on what is there that the government is trying to hide continuously as far as Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose is concerned. He has been the head of Indian National Army. There have been demands in the forward block for his file being classified, and the family too has been demanding. But all these demands seem to have been falling on the deaf ear as far as the probe is concerned.